Hello and welcome to Welcome Kitchen. Welcome Presents is a community project bringing together refugees, asylum seekers and the public to share food and watch films. Our events, which tackle isolation and loneliness, have been put on hold due to COVID-19, but we are raising money to buy a food truck so that our chefs can bring food to the community when the community cannot come to us. And we have reached 50% of our £10,000 target. If you could help us, that would be amazing. You can find out more at www.welcomepresent.com. My name is Rhianna Dhillon. I will be hosting this Q&A today. I am very excited to have with me Amber Ferris, who has directed a fantastic film, Speed Sisters, which came out a few years ago. I'm hoping most of you watching will have seen it. Amber, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so delighted to talk to you. This is going to be a lot of fun. Your film is fantastic.
Thank you.
So let's get straight into it. Why make Speed Sisters? Where did you hear about this tight little knit group of women racing in Palestine?
Yeah, I mean, the short story is I was living in Palestine at the time and came across them and was just, I'm Arab Canadian, and I am, I was always looking for sort of projects that could really help bridge sort of the growing divide between, my version and my experience in the Middle East, and about being from originally from the Middle East, and sort of the perceptions that are happening in places like Canada and the UK, America. And so when I came across the Speed Sisters, I was just like, I was amazed by them, and I just thought, what a great opportunity to tell kind of an unexpected story.
So how easy was it for you to, get involved with this group? Were they cautious about speaking to you? How did it happen?
No, you've not been to Palestine if you think anyone is cautious about speaking to you. No, they were incredibly open. I think, Palestinian culture is very warm and open and welcoming. And so people were more than happy to talk. And I had been living in Palestine at that point for 2 or 3 years, and so was also very familiar with the culture and sort of was known in the community and stuff. And a couple of them, like Noor and Maysoon, Maysoon's shop was very close to where I lived, and Noor literally just lived around the corner from me. So gaining access to them was very easy.
I mean, they are so charismatic and so brilliant to watch on screen. Was there ever a risk that they might not be good subjects, or what would you have done if they weren't as sort of brilliant and so full of energy?
Yeah, if they had been like race car drivers and boring, I think that would have been a problem.
Yeah.
But also the thing is that there's 5 of them, so at least 1 or 2 had to have been, it was sort of hedging my bets, I guess, in
that way. Do you have like specific techniques or ways of getting people to open up to you? Because they, as you said, they're very warm, they're very open, they like tell you about all aspects of their lives. So how do you make them like feel the most at ease and comfortable?
You know what, I became friends with them. I was really part of, I knew their families. I shot that film over a period of 4 years.
Wow.
And so, through that time, just really got to know their families, their friends, them. Like we were, I was very much a part of their lives. And then, and also when filming with them, sort of outside the races, we used an all-female crew. Okay. So it was usually me and a sort of a associate producer who also spoke Arabic, much better than I do, and then and sometimes a cinematographer. So we really had this feeling of being kind of like this girl, this like girl gang kind of deal. Like we were, and so they just, they placed a great amount of trust in me, and as did their families. And yeah, it was a really, I just had really great relationships with them.
There was this great bit, the sort of, what, about a third through the film, with Betty's trunk opening fiasco, which
Yeah.
kind of kicked off this row between her and Mara. So was that like kind of dream material for you as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I guess, like, I mean, we saw, I mean, I think for me, in looking, you know, we had these 5 women, and didn't necessarily know what the story was. Like, we
Hmm.
knew they're doing this really cool thing. They have all these things going on in their lives, but we didn't know what was the main thread that was going to piece the film
Yeah.
together. And I sort of shot all of them thinking that they could potentially be a main character at some point, because you
Hmm.
really, when you're making this kind of verite style documentary, you can you kind of, you don't know, like, you have, you know them, you can see what's going on, you can kind of see what's transpiring, and trying to take, you know, to be able to film that, or to capture that in some way, but you don't know what path it's going to take. And I think I had already been filming with them for like a year and a half, almost 2 years, like over 2 seasons, when I
Hmm.
started to see there was a rivalry that was beginning between Mara and Betty. That wasn't something that was happening right off the bat. So, and I think the trunk was just sort of like, it allowed us, it was like the visual tool that we were able to really be able to show that. But
Hmm.
it wasn't, it, from a filmmaking perspective, it wasn't the thing that showed us that. It was, like, we kind of saw it coming already. It was just a visual device that we were able to use to sort of bring that into the story a little bit more, obvious, yeah, in a more obvious way.
How is that for you then, as a documentary maker? If you can't see a story, if nothing is really, those threads aren't necessarily coming out, is that a bit of a danger in your job? Is that something you sort of like thrive off, like the challenge of finding the story?
Speed Sisters was my first film.
Hmm.
I had never made, I didn't start out as a documentary filmmaker. I wasn't trained in documentary film. So I was kind of learning as I was going along, and I had the luxury of living there. So I could just overfilm. I could film and film and film and film. And often I was doing the filming, often I had the camera, and it was like very low cost.
Hmm.
If I'm making a film where I need to pay other people to be there, then that becomes a real problem of not knowing
Right.
the story. You really do have to know the story. But in this case, I really just, I had the luxury of being able to see where see where it goes, and then to make those decisions in the edit.
Hmm. So if you're kind of holding the camera, you must have had an idea of how you wanted the film to look in terms of cinematography and all the
Mm-hmm.
rest of it. So what was your vision, I suppose, for the film when it's so sort of ad hoc, and like you've got things literally like missiles coming at you, and how do you sort of plan visually how something's going to look when it's in the
It's to have a visual vision was giving me far too much credit. I think I think it was really just like, let's just try to hold everything steady. You know what I mean? Like, um, I think for me, I mean, I don't know if I was thinking so much in a visual language, but more in an emotional
Hmm.
language. So for me, it was like really trying to connect with with like hoping that the audience would connect with these women in a, really understand them, really like feel what it is that they're going through, because I feel, and that's through humor, it's through, really investing in their story and in their journey, because I feel when people are really emotionally attached, they're much more open to learn something, to sort of
Hmm.
really try to empathize with the society and the situation that they're in. Like scenes of when Betty got shot. I mean, that is, there's nothing that you can do to visually. There's nothing you can do to prepare for that. That
Right.
wasn't something, we had filmed. They had a lot of press, of media that was happening as we were just trying to go out with them as much as possible, because we knew that there was some way that we wanted to sort of talk about about them growing in popularity, and that we'd be using, but not knowing, having a definite, I think, plan or strategy or really vision as to what we were getting out of that scene. So we were just there hanging out. We were going to film them. They're being interviewed and photographed and stuff like that. and there had been a protest. That was a place where they often trained, and when we got there, obviously the what transpired, and I think at the time, if I remember correctly, like we were sort of like, oh, we should leave, and Lucy Martin, who is a cinematographer that was working with us, sort of, somebody had said, Lucy, turn off the camera, and she kind of turned off the camera, and then I just yelled at her, I'm like, Lucy, turn the camera on, and she literally turned it on, pointed it, Betty got hit, and she got scared and turned it off. So like that actual footage, we weren't even sure if we filmed it. Like it was 27 seconds long, and it was just by pure luck that we got that on camera. Like it's just it's chaotic, right? And then what happens after that, it's just chaos, and you're just in those situations, just hopefully you are able to both protect yourself, make sure that everyone around you is safe, and that you're able to to film at the same time. There are elements, like I think that there's a mix between and the thing with the Speed Sisters too is like, this was like kind of a joke that we had, is like I would have this scene planned out, we're gonna go do this and this and this and this was gonna happen, and everything was gonna be great, but they have a mind of their own, and like it just would go so it was like you would plan, but then often you have to be, and I think this is in filmmaking in general, especially when you're doing verite, is that you can plan, but you also have to be flexible enough to allow them to take you to wherever they want to go as well, because most likely that's going to be more interesting than what you have in your mind. But there are definite, there are, and we also have the luxury that we were editing. We edited with this fantastic editor named Rabab Haj Yahya, who is Palestinian and was living in Jerusalem at the time, and so we were also able to like sort of start editing, and then when we needed to have pickups or like particular shots that we needed, stuff that we were able just to go and do that. So
I mean, it's incredible, like the amount of incredible footage that you got, like just like you say, having those things on camera must have been huge for you in that like aftermath of Betty getting shot. Also, like when Mara is kind of just roaming the streets, like obviously very upset and angry, how like in what capacity are you there? Obviously you were their friend, but also you're recording them. Are you not talking? Are you trying to comfort them? Are you questioning them? How does it work in those situations when they're
it sort of depends. Like I mean, you just have to sort of trust your instinct, like I just want to say something too about planning shots and how they turn out, now that I'm thinking of it. So the Betty getting shot was obviously a surprise, but we also wanted a reaction as to like what how the girls to weigh in. And so that scene that comes right after, which is them making fun of her, is, what we did there was just invited everyone there, and we just filmed whatever they were going to say. Right. And like, so like you can plan that scene, but I had no idea that it was going to turn into like roasting her in a way, which is like very indicative to Palestinian humor. You're okay? You're not hurt? Yeah. You're such a jackass. Like, you did that. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like, that's how that is very indicative of sort of the humor of Palestinians. I think
I loved Noor in that moment.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, how could you not? She's so funny.
She was amazing. And she was just like, just because you're blonde and pretty doesn't mean you're not going to get shot if you put yourself in that situation. And I just love that absolute no bull talking. It was great.
Yeah. Like, I thought they might console Betty, but it was just like, that's the way they wanted to take it. So that's like, But that's like, it's an example of like, you kind of, sometimes you just throw them together and let's just see, what's going to happen, like, let's talk about this. And then that comes out of it. I think for those, the thing with, something of Mara, I think it's just about allowing her to have whatever emotion it is that she's having. And I mean, obviously we film a lot too, so I can't remember, but in that moment we may have also interviewed her, but then didn't use it, or like, I mean, I think when you're making a documentary film like that, you're just trying to give the editor as many options as possible. So you don't want somebody speaking all the time, because you can't, they may say something that's brilliant, so you do want to have that, but you also need to have spaces where where you can just feel, and like, where you can just kind of be with them. So as a filmmaker, you're constantly thinking about different ways that a scene could be used, because you don't always know as you're filming it what exactly in the edit it's going to be used for.
Mm-hmm. A scene like that, I suppose, is when Mara is at the checkpoint just near the end and waiting, and almost like not sure whether she's going to go through, and the tension is just building as Noor is waiting for her outside. And so I was just wondering about filming around those checkpoints, because the camera, was that like it was like a fisheye lens, and it was like, is that like on clothing?
That was a very interesting shoot, that particular. So what had happened was that was right before Christmas, and Noor or Amara had been waiting to get a permit for an event that was happening at the British consulate or something like that. And so we were helping her sort of get that permit, but the permit didn't come. And then it finally came, but by that time, my entire crew had left for Christmas. They had left the country. So I shot that myself. So how that was shot was, is we had a GoPro mounted in Noor's car, and my camera was in the back of Noor's car, and then I drove behind them to the checkpoint, got out, illegally parked my car, said I was going to be back in 5 minutes, and didn't come back for 5 hours, but got out of the car, and I had a GoPro. And so I met up with Mara. Mara comes out, so you see whatever's happening in Noor's car. Mara comes out, I pick her up, just holding like a little GoPro on a tripod thing, and just held it close. And then I followed her through the checkpoint and went through that process with her. And then we came out the other side. She got into Noor's car. I grabbed my camera, and there was like a producer waiting for me. There was one producer that was left. He was waiting for me on the other side. I jumped in with him, and then we met them in. And we still had the GoPro running, and so they picked up Maysoon, and then they went on to Tel Aviv and Jaffa, and then we followed, and then I picked them up at the
amazing.
Yeah.
God, what?
And again, like her like jumping into the water, them like having that, like that's all, you know. I mean, I could never have scripted something like that, you know. Like it's really, but as a cinematographer, like those are the challenges, because you're just trying to react to what's happening, and to be able to capture the moment, as well as like have enough cutaways and enough to help build a scene for the editor. Like I couldn't just keep it on them the entire time.
No.
What's Maysoon doing? What does it look like? What is it? You know. So.
No, it was a really joyful scene. Actually, it was a real like kind of lovely climax to everything that, you know, they'd been building towards, and it's really special.
And the interesting thing, I mean, from a filmmaker perspective, you know, the interesting thing about that scene and the payoff of that scene, the real work of that came like earlier on, within the first, I think, 10 or 15 minutes of the film, where it was, we meet Mara, we meet her dad, we meet her grandpa, you know that she's, you know, why she's racing, and she's racing for Al Janine. And like that moment, like it was that scene that you were emotionally like, this was the person you were going to follow. Like that scene helped. The way that scene was edited made the payoff, the emotional payoff for when she goes into the water.
That was really interesting, seeing those sorts of three generations trying to have a conversation about what Mara wanted to do. And it was so incredible to see the support from her dad, and then the grandpa's perspective. It was so relatable. Just like that idea that generation just is never going to get like the motivations of the youth kind of thing.
I love that when he was like, no, you should be a doctor.
Yes.
Like it wasn't like my dad told me I should be a teacher. Like I'm like, that's the difference. My parents were born in Canada, so I didn't come from that sort of the same type of mentality in terms of education. So it was really funny to see, like, and also very, very indicative again to Palestinian culture, where, you know, I think there's this misconception about the oppression that, you know, that women are second-class citizens, and there are definitely tons of issues in terms of gender inequality and stuff like that. But I feel like in Palestine specifically, you know, women have been such a huge part of the social movements. Like educating your daughters is also important. There's a lot of women that are doctors, and in fact, I've also been part of a film about the first Muslim woman to be a judge on a Sharia court of law, right, in Palestine, and it's really looking at, you know, so I think it's really examining those nuances and stuff that I think is really important, and I think that's part of that with Speed Sisters too.
So how else did you try and use racing as a window into the minds of the Palestinian people that perhaps don't often get to have their say?
You know, I think that the racing was a really interesting metaphor for the occupation itself. Like in some ways, the racing was freedom. Like driving is freedom, and the fact that they were able to race there is a sense of freedom. And I think that because of the support that they got from the men and the support that they got from the other racers and their fathers and stuff like that, that was a really interesting and I think unexpected for most people, right? But I think the racing was interesting because it also, on the flip side, it's very similar to the occupation in the sense that there are roadblocks. You have to figure your way around. There's forever moving rules. There's one person that is dictating these rules that are changing all of the time, and you don't have any agency or any say to be able to question or to challenge, or, you know, so like I think the racing was interesting in that way of both showing the freedom that exists and the obstacles that exist within that society.
The guy, the one that you filmed each time at the beginning of the race. I mean, what a character. He was like gold, wasn't he, to listen to, because he was he was almost like cartoonish in his way of going, don't talk to me, I'm not interested in your problems. How you actually capture a couple of like face-to-face meetings with him, like one-on-ones. Again, he just seems so sort of angry and cross all the time. Was he fine with you filming him?
I think the great thing about Khaled is I'm not sure. Like he's an interesting character. Like he sort of represents, you know, that particular type of masculinity and power, right? Of the patriarchy. Like, I mean, that's what he represents. And again, like I think one of the great things about that film is that there's like that nuance of showing the different types of characters, of people that you would find in a place like Palestine, right? And there's definitely that exists. You know, at first I think he was a little bit like, he turned him into the meat. Like I think his perception of who he is and what he was saying, and then how it came across. But then I think one of the Maysoon's husband reminded him, like, you're strong, you're powerful, you're just showing your authority. And he was like, yeah, you're right. And then he was like, he kind of leaned into it and he was fine with it. So.
I mean, Maysoon as well, like following her journey from the beginning, so over 4 years, so you actually capture her like falling in love and getting married, and that was really lovely to sort of show like the sort of full spectrum of what her life looks like, and being a business owner, and I mean,
and a woman that's beyond her like prime, you know, like she was the oldest of all of them and in her mid-30s at that time, and you know, was living a life that was, you know, could be very unusual for like somewhat conservative cultures like that, you know. So
how did you know when to stop? Like, you know, you had 4 years worth of footage. Like, when are you like, okay, I've done enough now, we've got our story? When was the end point for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I can't really remember. And there wasn't a hard stop. Like and because I was living there were always pauses. It wasn't like I was filming all the way through. Like sometimes I wouldn't film for 6 months, or you know, like I'd be in and out. So I think at some point we were like, I think it was like after the season that Mara won. So like when like the actual end of the film, I think was like I think that's when we knew that we had it. And I filmed, I think, one more race. And unfortunately, I think that race Noor actually won, but it didn't make it into, like, I mean, it was, and so, yeah, but I filmed it because we were there. We just went and filmed it. But that was kind of the end, if I remember correctly, that was sort of the end of principal photography. And then after that, it was like doing some pickups. Like, we need, I don't know if this is necessarily it, but we need like a shot of like Noor driving, you know, across the check, or like by the wall, or that we need, you know, we need Maysoon to re-say this, or we need, you know, the audio was bad on this, we need this reset, or like that kind of stuff that we would go back and shoot. But it's also very interesting because you can see in the film, like from the first race that we were shooting, which was, I think, the race in Bethlehem, which was just me with an old, like, I can't even remember if it was a tape, like I can't even remember what camera I was using, and it was just me, right? Like, I don't know, or it was Jericho or something like that. It was when I was, and then to the end where we had like jibs and we had like multiple shots, and we had, because you could see where the influx of money, like, you know, because we had, I think we had just done like a fundraiser, like a Kickstarter or something,
right.
And had multi cameras and had like walkie talkies and, you know, like the whole thing. And then and then when that, it was like funny, so that when that argument with Mara happened, there were like 4 cameras like all around her, because we had all these people there. It was fun.
That was brilliant. It really was a great moment to capture. Just before we go, I just want to know about the impact that this doc had on that community when it came out. Do you know what happened around it?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I think this film has been, it was been very well received in Palestine. I mean, Palestinians really loved the film, and I think we had a huge, I think it's funny, right? Because I was living there for a lot of years. People really knew me. They knew I was making this film. I don't know if you've ever seen the film about Banksy, Exit Through the Gift Shop. When, like, right? And there's like, he's filming and just throwing everything and had no intention to edit. That's kind of what I thought. Like, everyone's just like, I'm filming. What are you making? And then all of a sudden just came back with this film. And I don't know if what people were expecting. And then when they saw it, and we had this big premiere in Palestine and stuff, it really, people just really, really loved it. Because I think Palestinians saw themselves in it. They related to the humor of it. They related to the relationship between Mara and her dad, which is something that is very rarely shown in films about the Middle East. And it represented their relationship they had with their father. Or I had a friend of mine that came up and said it made me want to be a better father. So like, to this day, like, I have Palestinian, like, you know, like people that will come up and say how much they love the film. So, you know, I think that it's a favorite amongst Palestinians. I think the interesting thing with that film, and one thing that we weren't expecting, is like the rest of the Arab world. So, you know, I think Palestine is you know, Arabs can't access Palestine. Like, they have to go through Israeli border crossings in order to get there. So most people from the Middle East, even Palestinians that are living outside, can't get there. And so their understanding is what they see through news media and stuff as well. So to be able to show them that kind of story about Palestine, the streets of Ramallah, like what it's like, and you know, it had, like, I think, a really big impact in the greater Arab world. And one of the things that I'm like kind of most proud of is, like, before Saudi Arabia had allowed women to drive, it was listed in the Saudi Gazette as one of the top films to watch during Ramadan on Netflix one year. So that was like, and that was up against blockbusters and
amazing.
Stuff. That was kind of great.
Amber Ferris, thank you so much for
you.
talking to us. What a brilliant chat and a brilliant film. Go and check it out. It's on Amazon. You must see it if you haven't. I hope we've persuaded you if you haven't seen it already. And just a reminder that Welcome Presents is this community project bringing together refugees and asylum seekers, and we would really appreciate any bit of support you could give us. We're raising money towards a food truck, trying to get out to the community when they can't come to us. So please do go to welcomepresent.com to give anything you can. We appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.